It's easy to describe the Australian national football team losing to 80th ranked Bahrain in World Cup qualification as a rock bottom moment. But the truth is that this result on the pitch is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to footballing woes down under. Off the pitch, a deeper and more complex footballing story has been decades in the making, grinding the wheels of progress to a halt multiple times, despite the best efforts from fans, board members, clubs, and even an independent committee funded by FIFA in 2018. In the same way the national team struggles to break down a low block, teams of experts have failed to untangle what on the surface seems a straightforward footballing landscape. Plans, reset strategies, and restructures have been drawn up to revive the beautiful game, but all we've seen is budget cuts, protests, and an ever-widening gap between the fans and the leadership. So, what's really happened to football down under? When John Aloisi's penalty rippled the net against Uruguay in 2005, it was a momentous moment in Australian football. The national team had managed to squeeze past the South American heavyweights in a penalty shootout after a 1-1 draw, placing themselves for the World Cup in Germany. The nation roared in jubilation, but there was one man who had to stop himself from cheering and sit back down on the couch, because he knew that goal going in meant football was inching just a little closer to toppling rugby league as the prominent sport in Australia. That man was David Gallop. 7 years after Aloisi's penalty, Gallop was appointed Chief Executive of Football Federation Australia, and having previously led the Australian Sports Commission, he knew all too well what the fabric of Australian sports was built on, and it wasn't football. And the man who has been on record fearing the overwhelming potential of the world's game was now at the helm of it. But football as a sport is not as interesting to men like Gallop. It's everything else the game has to offer. Football as a commercial vehicle is unparalleled in the world of sports, and this can be seen in the constant attempts at capturing some of the gold dust. Before men like Gallop and the existence of the A-League, the NSL reigned supreme. Scores of teams were dotted around Australia, with passionate fans and grassroots scenes built around each one, embedded in the fabric of their local communities. These teams fostered emotional connections, creating the perfect environment for a thriving football culture. Well, believe it or not, a few years into the future, and with Gallop in charge, Football Australia had introduced the National Club Identity Policy in 2014, which banned the display of any ethnic connection in its logos, imagery, or branding, even at the grassroots level. Many of these clubs were established by immigrant groups from Croatia and Greece, and this move killed this origin story. The law would be overturned 3 years later. Taking a step back here, the NSL might not have been flashy, the best quality, attracted world superstars, or even warrant inclusion in any video games, but it was real. And many of the league's most talented players knew that if they wanted to earn a living and develop further, they would need to make a step overseas sooner rather than later. This resulted in players like Viduka going to countries like Croatia to test his mettle. And once they left, there was no turning back. Sure, there was passion back home, but there was no financial safety net. And as weird as that sounds, it was the perfect start for football in the country. Many Australian footballing diplomats made the pilgrimage, and as a collective, surviving the European gauntlet without a backup plan had turned them into machines, or in other words, a golden generation. Kewell, Viduka, Cahill, Tony Popovich, and John Aloisi. But by the time this generation had come to a close, their achievements had come with a price. They had garnered the attention of the Aussie football administrators. This group had seen the bright lights of the FIFA World Cup in Germany, and they wanted a slice of the pie. And it's with them that the wheels of the game will truly ground to a halt.
For followers of the game, it's a familiar story. Soccer is one of the most popular football codes in the country. But poor administration, allegations of corruption and incompetence, and bitter factional struggles have prevented the game from developing. A few weeks ago, an independent inquiry recommended the existing board of Soccer Australia be replaced. But as Alan Sunderland reports, reform is proving quite a challenge.
The Australian government compiled the Crawford Report in 2003, looking into the state of soccer in the nation. The findings: football down under could not have been in a worse state. The governing body was in millions of debt. The grassroots scene had been completely neglected, as the people in charge had purely used the resources at their disposal for the funding of international football, chasing tournaments with their golden generation, without a sustainable backup plan. Football was dying off. The only feasible financial path forward was the establishment of the A-League, a franchise model league. If they got buy-in from big business, the sport would get the cash injection it so desperately needed, after years of neglect and playing second fiddle to other sports. 8 franchises would be established in key cities. Many of them were originally NSL teams with existing fan bases, while others were feasible as a business proposal but failed horribly in the football world. Each football franchise could now be used as a commercial vessel by the highest bidder. During the haze of franchising football down under, the sport was infiltrated by bad actors as well. An example of this is the 777 investment group from Miami. They are currently embroiled in multiple lawsuits back home in America for their dodgy dealings in the insurance industry. They've also personally brought multiple European clubs to their knees with their strange business practices. While 777 actually approached Football Australia to purchase a new franchise in 2022, and instead of saying no thanks, they actually recommended the controversial investment group speak with Melbourne Victory. Today, they are 70% stakeholders in the club. Their ultimate goal? To secure a piece of the broadcasting rights pie, not just in Australia, but globally. And this brings us to another key area of concern for football down under, which has been plagued by its own set of issues. 2024 began with the domestic game announcing support for its professional A-League franchises would drop to a historic low of just $500,000 per club. Why? A last-minute broadcasting deal taken in 2022 had now backfired. The league's broadcasting company, Global Advance, had gone bust. Australian professional leagues were forced into a last-minute deal to make sure screens didn't go blank just weeks out from multiple matches. Well, that deal had come with some caveats, like minimal viewing figures, and these targets had not been hit. It was just another nail in the coffin of bad decisions. Along with the dodgy broadcast deal, the APL had launched their media company Keep Up to get more eyeballs on the beautiful game. The more people that watch, the more money you make, right? Well, after spending close to $50 million on video and media content in a span of just 3 years, the results had been underwhelming. Once again, those in charge prioritized short-term financial gains over fostering a sustainable football culture. Imagine if even a fraction of that $50 million had been invested into grassroots football or youth development programs instead. You can't blame them for trying to make it easier to get eyes on the game. Every A-League season, the Perth Glory will need to hop onto a plane and travel to New Zealand to face the Wellington Phoenix. That trip alone is a round trip of 5,200 kilometers. The A-League spans incredibly long distances, an issue rarely faced in football to this scale. For most fans, away days are simply impossible. Combine this with decisions like selling the rights to host the A-League Final Series to the City of Sydney for $12 million, and football in Australia and New Zealand is clearly trapped in a cycle of financial experimentation, searching for quick fixes instead of long-term solutions. The sport's potential is undeniable, but without the right approach, it will remain vulnerable to poor investments and bad decisions. The path forward has always been clear. The game needs time, space, and proper nurturing to grow. If we invest in grassroots football and foster a genuine football culture, the financial success will follow naturally. It's time to focus less on using the game as a commercial vessel and more on creating a vibrant, sustainable football ecosystem that truly connects with people. More than ever, we are seeing New Zealand talent showing themselves on the big stage in leagues across the world. International tournaments have become exhilarating for the Socceroos, with scores of fans losing their mind when Lecky wormed his way through the Danish defence in 2022. The future of football down under is full of promise. Let's nurture it patiently without rushing the process. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe for more videos like this. There's so much more to unpack about this topic, I couldn't even scratch the surface in this video. So feel free to leave your thoughts below. How do you feel about the future of the A-League and football down under? Let me know. Have a great day and goodbye.